Have you ever said something like, I don't want to bother you, or I'm probably just overreacting, or maybe it's me being dramatic, or even the classic, it's fine, really? If any of these sound familiar, and they should because we all say them sometimes, I want you to stick around for a minute. Because while these phrases are totally normal, they can also be signs of something deeper, especially if they've become your default. So let's talk about how to tell the difference. Hi, I'm Madalena, and this is You Reclaimed. Today we're talking about the subtle, hidden ways that trauma shows up in our everyday language, in our nervous system, and in our close relationships, so that we can finally start choosing our words carefully and our lives and putting them on our own terms. So let's break down 3 of the most common phrases we use when we've learned that being easy or low maintenance is the only way to be safe in love. Wait, did you subscribe yet? I have a lot more to share and I'd love to have you here for it. It really helps my channel grow and I appreciate it so much. Phrase number 1, I don't want to bother you. This one sounds really polite, even thoughtful, but when it's coming from a place of trauma, here's what it actually means underneath. I don't believe my needs are welcome at this table. I've learned that when I ask for things, people turn away or they leave me altogether. This is what the fawning response looks like in everyday language. And if you've never heard that term before, fawning is one of the 4 main trauma responses along with fight, flight, and freeze. And it's what happens when your nervous system associates having needs, asking for things, being too much, or just taking up emotional space. It associates these things with some sort of punishment or with being rejected or with being abandoned. You might have grown up in an environment where your needs were chronically dismissed, or they were left unmet altogether, or where the adults around you were too distracted, or they were emotionally immature themselves, or their own emotional reactions were too explosive to respond to you calmly and peacefully. So in that case, what did you learn? Well, you learned to play it safe. Don't ask, don't make waves, don't disturb the peace. And over time, that strategy became your default. But here's the thing, keeping the peace by abandoning your needs, it's not really peace. It's like waving a fake peace flag. And even when you raise it, it only stays up for a little bit because your own needs resurface soon enough. What it is erasing yourself. So if I don't want to bother you is a sentence you say often, maybe try something like this instead. I know you have a lot going on, but when you do have space, I'd like to connect. And that phrase still respects the other person's time, and it's still thoughtful, but it doesn't make you disappear in the process. Phrase number 2, I'm just being dramatic, or it's probably just me overreacting. And this one usually shows up after you've had an emotional reaction of some sort. Maybe something someone said hurt you, or maybe you felt a little too intense after opening up and having a vulnerable moment. And then right after it happens, you shrink back. You second guess the way you reacted, and now you shame yourself out of feeling what you felt. This is not you being dramatic. This is your nervous system responding to something real. If your emotional reaction was justified in the moment, if you were dismissed or disrespected or you felt unsafe, then your feelings are valid, period. But if you grew up in an environment where your emotions were met with eye rolling, with being punished, or with the silent treatment, if your emotional expression earned you withdrawal from other people, or it earned you coldness, or being ignored for days at a time, then you may have internalized the idea that my feelings are not valid. And that belief then becomes a script over time, a repeating loop that overlays itself on top of every relationship you enter into. And you end up saying things like, it's not a big deal, or I'm probably just sensitive. Maybe I'm overthinking things. But those are trauma scripts running in the background. And they usually come from a deep distrust of your own emotional experience. And they're learned. They're not the truth. Now, this is where it gets a little bit tricky. Because here's something that most people won't tell you. Sometimes when you come from a background that includes emotional trauma, you do overreact. You don't overreact because you're dramatic or because there's something wrong with you, but you do it because your nervous system is still dysregulated and it's scanning for danger in moments that may not actually be dangerous at all. And your body isn't trying to lie to you in these moments. All it's trying to do is protect you and to keep you safe. But if your nervous system is stuck in survival mode on a regular basis, then you know that you can't always trust the intensity of that first emotional wave. So you do have to do your best to pause in moments when you feel yourself having a strong reaction and to ask yourself, am I regulated right now? Am I responding from calm awareness of what's happening? Or am I reacting from an old fear that's running in the background? Because you can't determine whether you're overreacting until you've given your body a chance to settle. And until you've returned to a baseline state where you feel calm and grounded and in control of your responses. And what happens to so many of us who are still dealing with cptsd or who are still working on regulating our nervous system, we do overreact sometimes. Then we feel ashamed for overreacting and then we shut down. And in this way, we get stuck in an ongoing loop of shame and self-silencing. And that loop is exhausting. And it's so hard to deal with when you're living inside of it. So here's the reframe we can use. Yes, sometimes the emotion is bigger than the moment requires, but instead of shaming yourself for this, you have to get curious and ask, is this feeling coming from right now? In this moment, or is it coming from something older? Do I need to regulate my nervous system before I respond in this moment? So try this. Instead of brushing off your emotional reactions altogether, try saying something like this. That brought something up for me. I want to take a moment to figure out what that is before I react. You are allowed to say that in the moment. You're allowed to take pause and ask that the other person give you a chance to cool down. There are no rules that say you have to have the perfect response right away. When we're dysregulated and when we come from a background of emotional trauma, we think that everything has to be resolved in the moment. There is such urgency to our emotional reactions, but it's seldom necessary to resolve things right now. Sometimes you just have to give yourself space because the truth can most often be found in that moment of pause. Phrase number 3, it's fine, when you know very well that it isn't. This one is so common in relationships that we make jokes about it. It barely even raises an eyebrow anymore. You're hurt, maybe you're disappointed, something has happened that has made you feel brushed off. But instead of saying how you really feel, you say, it's fine. But underneath that phrase is often something a lot more vulnerable. I'm afraid that if I tell the truth, I'll make things worse. So I'd rather disconnect from myself and from my own feelings than risk disconnecting from you. But this is emotional self-abandonment. And it's dressing up as maturity. You say it to keep the peace and you say it to avoid being dramatic. And you do it thinking that you're helping the relationship, but the truth is that your feelings don't disappear. They have nowhere to go. All they do is linger underneath. They sink beneath the surface and over time they build into quiet resentment. But this doesn't come from some sort of weakness on your part. It comes from a lot of practice. You've practiced going silent and disappearing into the background and swallowing your words because you learned early on that speaking up creates more conflict. But the cost is real and serious because your partner doesn't actually know how you feel when you do this. They can't fix something they don't even know is wrong. And while you start to resent them for not noticing that they've done some sort of faux pas or said something that hurt you, you also start to resent yourself because you're not speaking up when you know you should. So it's a lose-lose for everyone. So instead of trying to smooth everything over with it's fine, you can try something like this. I'm not totally okay, but I don't know how to talk about it yet. Can we come back to this later once I've had a chance to process my feelings? That's what a boundary sounds like when you're still finding your voice. You don't need to find it right away. There's no pressure for that. You don't even have to explain everything right away. You just have to stop pretending that your feelings don't matter. You can come back to your feelings tomorrow or the day after. The words we use in our closest relationships are rarely just words. A lot of the time they're echoes of what we were taught love is supposed to sound like out loud. So if you've been saying things like this for years, not because you mean them, but because they keep the peace, well, you're in good company. Many of us are still walking that delicate line between I want to be honest and I don't want to cause trouble. But healing means that we have to rewrite these scripts a little bit. It means that we have to learn to reveal ourselves honestly instead of living in fear of being seen and in fear of speaking up. Let me know in the comments if any of this sounds familiar. Are you catching yourself using these phrases? Are you starting to figure out ways to rewrite them? And if it sounds familiar, consider subscribing. We're just getting started here. See you in the next one.